We are going to talk about more about the connectivity, but in case we fall asleep, please at least pardon me, and we will try to deal with the set of questions given by the organizers, which we have shared with all our panelists on the trade investment connectivity and BIMSTEC session 2. This session, as you expect, there will be some overlaps in the first session. But we try to minimize overlaps, or we'll come out with more different observations or views from the panelists, by our panelists. I made some change in the order of the speakers, that we will first invite the panelists, and then at the end, my good friend Alex will be giving us special remarks. You will have an opportunity to also to respond to the questions or some observations by the panelists, as it is done in the previous session. Session is on trade investment connectivity, little bit about the introduction. The BIMSTEC came in place in 1997. First Secretary General is with us, who was a super champion in that time, activating Secretariat, the center. Many of his brilliant plans and ideas are still under implementation. So FTA, he was leading the trade negotiation committee. I don't remember how many TNCs he was in charge, but FTA's negotiation, it has 5 wings. Goods component has been negotiated, services, investment, rules of origin, dispute settlement, still work in progress. In short, BIMSTEC free trade agreement, for which a framework agreement was signed in 2004, is still in work in progress. If you come to the investment in the region, as you know, there are restrictions on the investment flow. It's not an automatic way or automatic route if there is an inward investment in India. So investment, if you leave out some of the member states of BIMSTEC, investment flow bilaterally between India and Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, maybe better than India, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, India, Nepal, India, Bhutan. And of course, in both investment and goods and services, there are many trade barriers. Some of them are discussed already. We are going to listen to from our eminent speakers. On the connectivity front, as I speak today, Bangladesh delegation has negotiated a deal that they are going to use India's Vizag port for their global merchandise trade, particularly the garment exporters, using the India-Bangladesh coastal shipping agreement. Bangladesh is very generous to help, allow India to use its ports like Chattogram, Mongla for cargo transportation to and from India's northeastern part of India, which is landlocked. In return, Bangladesh, is using in Delhi International Airport for cargo, particularly air cargo, and now the Vizag port, Bangladesh has picked up for their global trade and transportation purpose. Because bilateral coastal shipping agreement allows both the countries, using each other ports for their internal and external trade transportation purpose. But we haven't made much progress on regional front. BIMSTEC master plan of connectivity is completed, but implementation is, yet to see a major push for the projects that's identified, about 76 billion value in terms of the total value of the projects. Second is BIMSTEC motor vehicle agreement is not yet negotiated. But in between, BIMSTEC member states completed the negotiation for BIMSTEC maritime cooperation agreement, which the leaders are going to sign it in September when there will be a summit here. That BIMSTEC maritime cooperation agreement is a larger version of the bilateral coastal shipping agreement that we had in Bangladesh and India. So what we see that there are many good progress in the bilateral wise, but regionally we haven't done much, so that's why there is high potential. We haven't done much in terms of digital, the regional point of view. We haven't done much on the trade currency, etc., etc. In the morning session, Professor Mustafizur and others spoken about it, about the importance for the trade in local currency, digital interaction, engagement, etc., and so on and so forth. To discuss these are the issues on the trade investment connectivity in BIMSTEC. I have a panel of 5 eminent scholars. The Stellar panel, will talk about trade barriers, investment barriers, connectivity issues, and since there will be Bangkok declarations tomorrow, which will be fed into the summit process, I would request them at the end, please, give some recommendations, at least 1 or 2, so that we can take them in the summary of the outcome document to all of them. This is a special request. Time for 10 minutes to each speakers. And with them, may I invite Dr. Salim Raihan to take the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Prabir. So we have a post-launch session, which is always challenging. But I know that since the topics are very interesting, I hope that we'll be having a good and interesting session. So this session is about trade investment connectivity. First, I think some of the things what Dr. Prabir mentioned that will be a bit of repetitive, because in the first session we had a very rich discussion on the trade and FTA. But what is really important that despite that countries in BIMSTEC region that gradually reduce their tariff over the years, but still trade barriers remain, and this is something important. So if you look at the smaller countries, we see that both the tariff and non-tariff barriers are there, especially the tariff barriers. And for the larger countries, increasingly the non-tariff barriers, which are important. Probably they have reduced their tariff rates at a faster rate than the smaller countries, but increasingly at the same time, the non-tariff barriers or non-tariff issues, measures have been put in place. In the context, we should also take into account that 2 BIMSTEC countries, member countries, Bangladesh and Nepal, they are graduating out from the LDC status. And then this will also add a new set of challenges to them, especially in terms to market access and various other things. And in addition to that, I think the ongoing economic crisis in some of the BIMSTEC countries is also very important, that when it comes to trade integration and investment integration, if the domestic economy is not really doing very well, then the appetite for regional integration may not be that great. So this is something probably we need to keep in mind. But we also heard about FTA in the morning, that there has been not much progress in the FTA discussion. There are some technical issues, of course. We know that when it comes to negotiations on the FTA, some of the issues like sensitive list, there were some disagreements on the sensitive list, especially, and then there was a kind of reluctance to open up the economy and various non-tariff issues, which really undermined the prospect of the FTA. But also, what we see that in the context where we are having this FTA discussion, and the FTA, which actually the discussion and the BIMSTEC, which initiated, I think, long back, what we heard in the first session is that you need to take a very new approach to this FTA discussion, because increasingly now, countries are engaging more and more in the comprehensive kind of agreement. It's not only investment and services, but also various other areas which need to take into account. And the best example is in Asia, the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, where we see there are 20 chapters and many issues which the WTO could not really make good progress. RCEP actually brought these issues in, and some of the even smaller countries in ASEAN, they joined this agreement. So there's a very good lesson for BIMSTEC. I think I kind of agree with Dr. Sabyasachi Kaur when he suggested that, was it Sabyasachi Kaur, I think, or that give a 1 year, Ganeshan, Dr. Ganeshan, yes. That gives just 1 year timeline, and then FTA, if not, then take a completely fresh approach to this FTA discussion. So that could be one of the suggestions, in addition to what Dr. Ganeshan said, that when you take this a fresh approach, take a more comprehensive approach in the FTA negotiation. Investment side, of course, I think when it comes to inter-regional investment, there's a huge prospect that there are two major investor countries in this region, India and Thailand, and senders of investment. And the recipients of investments are mostly the smaller countries. But if you look at the flow of investment coming from India and Thailand to the smaller countries, this picture is not that really great. So actually, even during the lunch break, or even in the tea break in the morning session, we were discussing that Bangladesh had offered India 2 special economic zones. But if you look at the progress of implementation of the special economic zones, is very low. And it's not only the Indian economic zones, it's the progress of economic zones in other areas also in Bangladesh, in other economic zones, it's not that really great. So there is a serious problem of state capacity in implementing even some of the national agenda. So I think when it comes to investment promotion and attracting large-scale foreign direct investment, especially from these 2 countries, I see that the very high potential of attracting investment from India and Thailand. We need to materialize or implement some of the programs which the smaller countries have already announced at the national level. For example, Bangladesh as a government has a very strong or kind of plan of establishing 100 economic zones by 2030, which is not feasible anyway, but at least 10 to 20 economic zones, if they can materialize, I think that will definitely attract large-scale foreign direct investment. Some of the other initiatives, like, in Bangladesh, there is a Matarbari project where Dr. Prabir, he knows that we jointly worked on that particular project where Japan came and invested there. It's not only the construction of huge power plant, coal-based power plant, but at the same time, construction of a deep sea port, which is going on. And that has the potential of, again, opening up of huge opportunities of integrating northeastern India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and connecting it to the other Bay of Bengal countries. So this is, I would say that when it comes to investment promotion, one strong suggestion would be that it's already there. We talked about political will. There's already some agendas or some programs are there at the country level. I know Nepal, I know Sri Lanka, I know Bangladesh, they have already, government has plans for establishing several economic zones and attract foreign investment. But when you look at the success, it's very low. So we need to remove those barriers and allow investment, and more importantly, allow the investment from particularly this region. Now, coming to the connectivity issues, so this is very much dependent on the regional development of the regional infrastructure. And when we talk about regional infrastructure, it's a regional public good. And what kind of infrastructure? I see there are 4 kind of infrastructures which are extremely important for having a meaningful connectivity at the regional level. Physical infrastructure, we talk quite a lot about this. Digital infrastructure, this is something coming up very strongly. Financial infrastructure, which is also extremely important, that we heard about financing issue in the morning, and this is something we see that the financial institutions in this region, they are not properly integrated, and this poses a serious challenge to that. We heard about common currency, or I think common currency is a very far reach, but the currency exchange or currency integration, unless we do have a proper financial integration among the financial institutions, this currency swap or those kind of things would also be very, very problematic. But when it comes to regional infrastructure, less we hear about social infrastructure, the building of the human capital. This is also very important because some of the countries in this region, and which includes my country too, Bangladesh, spends very little on developing human capital. If you look at the public expenditure on health and education, it's very, very low. Then when it comes to actually building the right kind of human capital for having this, we are talking about trade promotion, we are talking about investment promotion. But if we don't have the right kind of skilled manpower there, then this poses a serious problem. when it comes to proper integration. So my suggestion would be, in this case, that all the master plans are there. We saw that the connectivity master plans, but we also heard about, saw that the kind of the investment gap is also being identified. But how this can be materialized, we also heard in the morning that the implementation is a big challenge. But when it comes to implementation, the social infrastructure remains a big challenge too. So one of the suggestions would be how the BIMSTEC countries can collaborate. I know that there is a session on people-to-people connectivity, but here is a real opportunity for cooperation among BIMSTEC countries to develop human capital at the regional level. So my final points would be that to take this BIMSTEC agenda forward, the role of the national governments is extremely important, especially how they are motivated, how they make their regional integration agenda as part of their national development agenda. This is also very important because I remember Dr. Surat in the morning, he was talking about making BIMSTEC popular among the different stakeholders. But it is also it's very important that in the curriculum, in the national curriculum, even in the discourse, bringing this whole regional integration agenda, again and again, so that there is a kind of consensus of having this regional integration initiative. The development partners, the role of development partners is very important. And we know that ADB, World Bank, they are also playing very important role. But I also see that there is a kind of lack of synergy among these initiatives, partly because that the national governments, their own initiatives are not really very synchronized. There are some fragmentation in the initiatives of the national among the national governments in this BIMSTEC region. One final issue is that we talk about trade facilitation, and this is something very important to reduce the trade cost and increase the trade among the region, within the among countries among the region, and also promote investment. But the problem is, and that's something we also heard in the morning, that unless the countries, especially the smaller countries, they diversify their export basket, they enhance their capacity, many of these countries see trade facilitation as nothing but import facilitation. So there is a kind of revenue concern because the policymakers, they see that, okay, if the trade facilitation is there, am I able to export? Or it is mostly I have to import, or my imports becomes cheaper there. And where I can see that there is a concern among the policymakers who are, or the countries who are highly dependent on import revenue for the government income. So I think there is a serious challenge. So in that case, you can see that there is a resistance towards the trade facilitation agenda because it is coming from that perspective that whether trade facilitation is actually a trade facilitation or an export facilitation too. So this is something we need to take this agenda when you talk about trade facilitation, where the export promotion capacity of the countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, or Myanmar are enhanced so that they can get into the larger market like India and Thailand. And that's something will enhance the confidence of the policymakers to have a more open trade regime in this particular region of the world. With this, I'd like to conclude and thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raihan. Thank you very much. Some of your suggestions, like the role of national governments in promoting BIMSTEC, very important. Some of the countries in the BIMSTEC region, we haven't seen a single advertisement in national media on the BIMSTEC Day. No. Please, if you have come across, please tell me. Anyway, we'll debate on that later. And thank you, Dr. Raihan, also within the time, your presentations. So let's move on. And our next speaker is Dr. Sathaporn. Professor Sathaporn is with Thammasat, good friend of Dr. Ruth Banomyong. Ruth is champion for trade facilitation, etc. His colleague is going to talk about the connectivity issues. So floor is yours. 10 minutes to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Slide, please. I have 20 slides and I have to cover in 10 minutes. Let's see how I can do it. And the topic I'm going to talk today is about BIMSTEC, ASEAN Connectivity, Thailand Perspective. So basically, I will be focusing on the role of Thailand in providing strategic linkage for the within BIMSTEC itself and further to ASEAN, which is one of the major regional grouping of which both Thailand and Myanmar, the two BIMSTEC member states are also a member. So the clicker doesn't work. What should I do? Okay, it's worked now. All right, I'm going to start my talk with the strategic location of Thailand, as you can see from this picture. For ASEAN, you can see that Thailand is located at the center of Indochina Peninsula. And the country share the border in the north with Myanmar and Laos PDR, Laos and Cambodia in the east, and Myanmar in the west, and Malaysia in the south. And the entire coastal land in the south is surrounded by Andaman Sea and Gulf of Thailand. So with this advantageous location for ASEAN, Thailand can serve as a hub for road transport and maritime gateway for Indochina Peninsula, if not the entire ASEAN. And this is not the case. Why we have Thailand has a comparative advantage in terms of location for ASEAN. This is not the case for BIMSTEC. As you can see from the map from this slide, is that Thailand is the farthest east of the 7 BIMSTEC member states. And to make things even worse, Thailand share borders with only one BIMSTEC member status, which is Myanmar. So basically, it is quite obvious that Thailand could not provide a physical connection with the other part of BIMSTEC except for Myanmar. Anyway, with the strategic and advantageous location of Thailand, the country still can serve as a very potential linkage between BIMSTEC and ASEAN connectivity, and the mode choice will play a very crucial role in that. And so next I will give you an update on the current situation of each mode of transportation. I'm going to start with air transport, followed by waterways, and land transport, which consists of rail and road. Before that, let's take a look at some interesting figures. So BIMSTEC is 30 years younger than ASEAN. It has 7 member states. It's too fast. I want to stick with this slide. All right. And in terms of population, BIMSTEC has a combined population greater than double of ASEAN population. For the size of economy, BIMSTEC has a greater GDP than ASEAN, that of ASEAN. And when we look at the GDP of India alone, is greater than ASEAN combined. And last but not least, this is a very interesting number. You can look at intra-regional trade within BIMSTEC accounts for only 5% as compared to 20% intra-regional trade within ASEAN. So this reflects that there's a lot to catch up for BIMSTEC in terms of transport connectivity and trade facilitation. So next I'm going to start with the first mode of transportation, which is air transport. I would say that air transport is the most effective mode of transport linking BIMSTEC with Thailand and would further to other part of ASEAN. This thanks to the extensive air route network centered at Suvarnabhumi Airport. And to strengthen the air transport performance, the Thai government has come up with several projects to upgrade Suvarnabhumi Airport. One of them is to increase the capacity of Suvarnabhumi Airport, which is the major international airport of Thailand, from currently 45 million passengers to 90 million passengers. Another interesting development project I would like to mention here is the project of constructing a high-speed train connecting 3 major airports. One, Don Mueang Airport in Bangkok, Suvarnabhumi Airport in Sumut Prakan Province, and the brand new one, Utapao Airport in Chonburi Province. And with this all supporting infrastructure, the law of air transport for BIMSTEC, Thailand, and ASEAN connectivity would be strengthened. Anyway, we can notice that air transport is economically feasible for only passengers and certain kind of products, such as high-value products and time-sensitive products. For general cargo, maritime transport seems to be a better choice and is more economically friendly. So next I will move to water transport, maritime transport. And Thailand, there are 5 major seaports. Yeah, we have Bangkok Port in Bangkok, Lam Chabang Port, and Silacha Port in Chonburi Province. And Lam Chabang Port is the largest deep sea port in Thailand. We have Mataput Port in Rayong Province. And the last one is Songkhla Port in Songkhla Province in the southern part of Thailand. As you can see that all these 5 major seaports have one thing in common. That is, they all are located on the east coast of Thailand. Actually, there's a seaport on the west coast of Thailand. It's called Lanong Port. It's in the Lanong Province. But because of the limited capacity and insufficient for the depth, the port cannot handle large container vessels and has played very small role in BIMSTEC and Thailand maritime connectivity. So all the seaborne cargo flowing between BIMSTEC and Thailand has to take a longer route, that is, go all the way to the south from all the port on the east coast and cross and pass through the Strait of Malacca before heading to the BIMSTEC. And this is clearly make maritime transport is not a favorable choice for BIMSTEC and Thailand or even ASEAN connectivity. All right, and the last mode of transportation I would like to talk about is land transport, which consists of road and rail. I would like to start with rail transport. I would say that for Thailand, the rail transport is the weakest mode of transportation with unreliable service and less frequency of service. And a huge problem of rail transport in Thailand lies in the fact that the railway network covers only 47 provinces out of 77 provinces of Thailand, and 90% of the railway network are single track. So the Thai government realized the importance of railway in providing the domestic and international transportation connectivity, and has come up with several projects to enhance the railway performance. And one of them include the dual track rail expansions. As you can see from this slide, is demonstrate the section of the railway network that is being and will be upgraded from single track to double track. All right, and there's another infrastructure development for railway network, which is the high-speed train. The kicker is quite slower than I expect. All right, there is a high-speed train which stretch from Bangkok to Nong Khai province in the eastern part of Thailand, and then connect with RAO PDR China train as part of a China Belt and Road initiative. So it's quite clear that when it comes to railway infrastructure development, Thailand is choosing the goal-based policy, and the momentum of the railway infrastructure development has shifted in favor of Thailand and China connectivity. And although we know that BIMSTEC has the largest railway network in the world, there's no railway connection between Thailand and Myanmar. And the missing link of the railway connection between Thailand and Myanmar make it impossible for Thailand to connect with BIMSTEC, from BIMSTEC to Thailand and to further ASEAN by train at the present time. And the last mode of transportation I would like to talk about is road transport. It's pretty clear from this figure is that the road transport is the most dominant mode of transport for domestic freight transport, with over 80% share. And this reflects how well the road network in Thailand is developed and connected. All right, this slide show on the left side is the densely connected road network in Thailand. Yeah, almost done. And on the right hand side is a sparsely connected railway network. I have 2 minutes. And speaking of road transport connectivity, what has to be done in terms of BIMSTEC and Thailand and ASEAN connectivity is to complete the construction of the ongoing corridors, which is the India-Myanmar Thailand or IMT trilateral highway, especially on the India and Myanmar section, because once the cargo cross the Myanmar and Thailand border, the cargo can be efficiently distributed to other part of ASEAN countries using the very well developed and connected road network of Thailand. And so the law of Thailand in terms of road transport is to ensure the streamline and safe movement at the cross-border. And that should be achieved by streamlining the cross-border procedure and formalities. And the concept of CCA or Common Control Area or SSI, Single Stop Inspection, as recommended by the World Customs Organization, should be adopted and implemented on all the borders between Thailand and Myanmar. So, as a recap, for the air transport, Thailand is doing good. And with the new infrastructure development, the air transport in Thailand and the law of it as a linkage, connectivity between BIMSTEC and ASEAN look promising. For maritime, without a new port on the west coast of Thailand, maritime transport is not a favorable choice for BIMSTEC and Thailand connectivity. Rail transport, without the missing link connection between Thailand and Myanmar, the railway connectivity between BIMSTEC and Thailand to ASEAN is out of the question. And last but not least, for the road transport, we need to speed up the development of IMT trilateral highway construction and improve the border crossing procedure on the Thailand-Myanmar border. All right, that's the wrap from my talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Satapurn, for an excellent presentation. I'm sure it will have many questions from the floor. I'm also going to ask some during the Q&A. Thank you once again for the presentation. Okay, let me now invite Dr. Paras Kharal, Executive Director, Swati in Kathmandu. So, Dr. Kharal, over to you. 10 minutes to you as well.
Thank you, Professor De. And thank you, the organizers, including SANEM and the Chulalongkorn University for holding this important workshop or conference just before the BIMSTEC summit. Now, the professor who spoke just before me, pointed out, if I noted it correctly, that exports from Thailand to Europe will take about 12 days by railway when the project materializes. Now, compare that to the current situation whereby exporting a consignment to Europe by sea for a landlocked country, which is Nepal, and Bhutan is also a landlocked country. Currently, exporting a consignment to Europe by sea could take up to 55 days, whereas it should take no more than 28 to 32 days, even after taking a detour via the Kolkata port. Now there is a high degree of uncertainty in time and cost, and just compare 55 days versus 28 days. And there's also an estimate in the literature that each day lost in transit is equivalent to up to 2.1%, right, in ad valorem tariffs, and you do the math. And that in a way dilutes the duty-free preferences that LDCs get in the European Union market. We may be getting zero duty access to the European Union market for garments or carpets, but this trade cost in a way dilutes that. So different countries in BIMSTEC have different motives of joining BIMSTEC. Some countries are relatively confident about trade liberalization, relatively speaking. For example, India has already granted duty-free access to a range of products, almost all products for LDCs. It has an FTA with Sri Lanka, it has an FTA with ASEAN, right? So it may be eyeing connectivity. And but smaller countries may be less, enthusiastic about trade liberalization as such due to domestic, factors, as Dr. Salim Rehan also pointed out. So take the case of the BIMSTEC Free Trade Agreement. The framework was signed way back in 2004. And why the progress has been slow. So it's a question of give and take, providing concessions. And for some countries like Nepal, the total revenue of the government relies on import-based taxes for up to 50%. 50% of its revenue comes from import-based taxes. Now, as a trade economist, I can recommend that, okay, I ran a partial equilibrium model using WITS, right? And you reduce tariffs to zero, certain amount of trade will be created. That's fine. But then policymakers have to also deal with this revenue concern. And because that's very much part of the discussion in Nepal. And government reports, one after another, also highlight this aspect. In fact, the tariff concessions, limited tariff concessions we have provided to under SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement, have also been questioned by some quarters, arguing that these have led to revenue loss and also impacted domestic industry, right? So, and at the same time, deindustrialization is happening in the sense that manufacturing as a share of GDP has really plunged. It's barely 6% of GDP, which is very low for a relatively poor country. What can we do about it then, right? So in this context, I have come across development partners who consistently advocate trade liberalization, right? And trade liberalization under BIMSTEC would also be music to their ears. So one way to approach it is to have some trade adjustment funds. So if you look at the Aid for Trade initiative at the global level, there is a window called trade adjustment. But most of the aid for trade falls under different categories, like, for example, institution building or infrastructure building, but hardly any aid for trade comes under trade adjustment funds. Now, setting up such a fund, not necessarily under BIMSTEC, but even at the country level, and asking development partners, to help in this regard, to help build supply-side capacity, or somehow even link to the BIMSTEC Development Fund that some have argued should be created, would kind of provide some encouragement to policymakers to make tariff concessions on the FTA front as well. And the other point is Nepal, along with Bangladesh and Bhutan. Bhutan has already graduated from an LDC status, and Nepal and Bangladesh are graduating in 2026. Now, if we were, hopefully, let's hope that the FTA comes into effect by 2026, which is maybe unlikely. But as an LDC, we could have argued that, okay, we have received certain exemptions under SAFTA, right? And we would also want to receive those under BIMSTEC FTA, or Laos PDR or Cambodia under ASEAN may have had, received certain exemptions, right? By the same token, we should also receive something. However, understandably, this cannot go on and on and on, but there should be a certain timeline. But even in the spirit of global negotiations, certain special and differential treatment, even after post-graduation for a certain time, might be warranted. The next point is non-tariff measures. Now, even within the region, even on products where tariffs have been zero, trade has not made much headway, partly because of non-tariff measures. These include standards-related issues, as well as para-tariffs, and export restrictions, by the way, are also very much part of non-tariff measures. And in these days, restrictions on exports of food items, for example, that take place within the region, hurt import-dependent countries. Now, if BIMSTEC were to able to have a mechanism that somehow addresses non-tariff measures, then that would be a great departure or value addition to existing initiatives. In fact, existing bilateral free trade agreements within the region have not been able to effectively address non-tariff measures. And here perhaps we can learn from the experience of ASEAN. Because after all, BIMSTEC is all about learning from the experiences of certain aspects of SAFTA, SARC, as well as from ASEAN. And here, creating a database on NTMs would be, I think, very relevant because ASEAN has such a database, and it looks useful even for researchers outside the region. Similarly, certain initiatives were taken within SARC as well as under SASEC, South Asian Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation Initiative, but it wouldn't really take off. Now, having a database on non-tariff measures is the first step towards addressing non-tariff measures, because they are not as clear as, for example, tariffs, which is just about certain percent. That's one point. And on services trade, yes, we should try to go for services trade. Now, again, the critical aspect would not be just signing the service free trade agreement, because that was already done even under SAC or SAFTA. But there, the stumbling block, as I understand, was with regard to exchange of schedule of commitments. That will be very crucial. And side by side, trade negotiators also seem to lack the technical capacity and understanding with regard to services, compared to what the understanding they have with regard to goods. So some technical capacity building would also be helpful. And on the connectivity front, a BIMSTEC-wide transit or through transport arrangement, should be the ultimate goal. And here too, certain studies and have been held under SARC, and BIMSTEC also has done similar studies. And our BIMSTEC transport connectivity master plan is already in place, right? But again, hard infrastructure is important. At the same time, soft infrastructure is also important. And in this context, the Trade Facilitation Strategy Framework 2030 that the ADB supported for BIMSTEC is important. And it talks about having a midterm review in 2025, right? That's just around the corner. And there also it talks about having the necessary data, to have updates on how we are faring on the trade facilitation front. So in this context, I would also like to highlight that, periodic studies involving business process analysis that will enable us to benchmark and compare how we are progressing on trade facilitation measures within the region will be very crucial, because trade facilitation measures are taking place, for example, at the bilateral front between Nepal and India, Bangladesh, India, or Nepal, Bangladesh, India, or Thailand and Myanmar. To what extent they have, reduced cost and time will help us, formulate strategies going ahead around the region. And the next point is with regard to the, again, BIMSTEC, master plan on transport connectivity. Now, again, finance is crucial. Now, ADB has helped come up with that plan, which is good. But the ADB alone won't be able to, foot the entire bill. So the World Bank and, as was mentioned earlier, the AIIB would also be relevant. And yes, a lot of things these days are mired in geopolitics, yes. Partly, the initiation of BIMSTEC itself was partly driven by, geopolitical considerations. But these three multilateral institutions sort of have, broad support. Even countries at opposite ends of the geopolitical spectrum, for example, are members of not the World Bank and the ADB, but also part of AIIB, right, who are otherwise geopolitical rivals. And then BIMSTEC Charter, I went through it, also has a provision for observers. Since there is a provision, we must hope that we want to implement it. Now, who are the potential observers? One would be traditional, multilateral institutions like the ADB or the World Bank. But there is also an option of bringing in other countries, right? And the selection of countries would naturally depend on the extent of trade and investment ties these various countries have. This is about it for now. And later, if you have questions, I will respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paras. Thank you very much. You raised many important issues on connectivity trade front, like state adjustment fund, very new ideas. Your proposal like business process analysis on trade facilitation. So I'm sure we will have more discussion and Q&A session on these issues. So thank you once again, Dr. Paras. I now invite Professor Sininath. Professor Sininath, the floor is yours. I'm sure you were talking about digital. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Prabi. Your guess is right. I'm going to talk about digital trade, digital connectivity. So my talk today is going to be on digital trade with the Bay of Bengal region from Thailand perspective. I think for the topic here, I really continue from the first session that I take like two keywords. We talk about digital, we talk about connectivity. So this is how I see the progress in terms of BIMSTEC to move forward. We're talking about FTA. How can we put those things together to enhance the movement of the framework? Let me start by, from the first slide, please. Okay. When we talk about digital trade, right now it's kind of like become one of the engine of growth for the economy right now. Okay. So when we talk about engine of growth for the economy, right now, digital trade is one of them. We don't only trade in terms of goods and services, but we can do something like hybrid for the online transaction. And from that one, the Bay of Bengal region is one of the potential region for cooperation in this kind of digital trade. In terms of strategic, we are the region that stand next door between Southeast Asia and South Asia. If we can add in terms of the online connection, we hope to enhance more trade and even the transport of the physical food afterward. For the BIMSTEC country here, kind of like if we want to see from perspective of Thailand, how do we see BIMSTEC? One additional benefit or additional on is that this is a trading partner that beyond ASEAN. So ASEAN is we group together, but we also connecting to the neighboring country beyond ASEAN and also beyond the Indo-Pacific. So this one gives Thailand with greater diversity and also the balance and diversify in terms of we passed the COVID-19. We see how when things cluster in one region, when something happens, we see then we need to adjust ourselves. After that, digital trade is also kind of like one for all in terms of, not only in terms of international dimension, but for each country. Thailand, we do have Thailand 4.0 that we focus on how to make creative economy, innovation economy, something like that. And on the Indian side, so we have like Digital India. So this is kind of like how the government from both sides enhance this kind of connectivities. When we look at these two regions between Thailand and India, these two are the kind of like can be the representative for each continent here. For Thailand, we rank the second in ASEAN in terms of the size of digital economy. By year 2025, from the study of the Google Temasek Bain and Company, they forecast that we expected to have a gross merchandise value of 53 billion US dollar. That's the coming year. And also, if you look closer into e-commerce market value, they expect to have like 32 billion by next year. So we can see the potential of market that's keep growing. From the Indian side, India have a large online consumer base for sure, diverse demographic, and also digital infrastructure and services. So this one, how can we link those two, country together and also representing to region as well. Thailand and India can expand both their online market. They can complement each other by having digital connectivity and prosper together. From that one, if we look further, let's see to the second point. What is the role of cross-border e-commerce in fostering regional integration? We talk about FTA, we talk about deeper integration. How can this one play a role here? When we talk about e-commerce that cross-border, for sure, first thing first, it can promote more trade between the region. And, we can start by India and Thailand and then can expand to the, other country in the region as well. It can increase the market access because the online trade, even the small firm, they can do that because kind of like low cost in terms of be in other market, they can go by online direction. And also they have broader consumer base. One more point that I think this kind of digital trade can also help is to help the SME because they don't have that big money. So if they want to, if they have some idea, they have some good they want to sell to the global market, online platform can be one choice for them. So this is not only for growth, but also in terms of development for the marginalized group people as well. And I think last point is one thing that for me, I think is very important as well. To promote more trade, we need to know each other first, how you eat, how you live, how your clothes look like. And online platform is one channel that people can get to know each other more. From Thai people, I can see that right now many Indian products on the shelf in the pharmaceutical, let's say Himalaya, the foam or the cream, So if we know each other more, we can, recognize and we can, we want to know more. And online platform can be one channel to get those sides closer together. From that one, that go to the third point. How can we go forward in this kind of, this direction? I think one thing that we can pick up from being a member in BIMSTEC is that the existing difference and diversity between BIMSTEC country can be transformed into opportunities. So when we get to know each other more, we can see the difference and we can, maybe like some of Thai business market are in India, in Bangladesh and so on, and on the other way around. And to do that, digital connectivity, digital trade, how to create more flow between the two regions and also, among the member country. I think right now we always go back to digital connectivity anyway. Even though we talk about the advanced country, technology changes so fast. Even though they have technology, they have to keep update anyway. But back to BIMSTEC picture. So I think for, as a fundamental, digital connectivity is the key that we can develop right now. What are the components in there? I think the first keyword, participant already talked about that in the morning, digital infrastructure. So we need the hardware, we need the system to connect people together. And that did some funding that we already discussed. The second point I think is also very important, digital skill. Is the people who use it. So even though we have a good signal, very high, very advanced technology, but if people cannot use it, digital skill, right now I think we're not only talking about know how to use it, but how to be safe in the online world as well. So those kind of things are very important. And also we have heard about many issues relating to digital dimension. And the last but not least, I think the law and regulation is very important as well. Because right now it's not only one country, but how the country connect together. So if the system is not consistent, it's going to be some kind of like new kind of barrier between the country as well. I think the last point for digital connectivity is kind of like, if I can share from the perspective of the ASEAN situation, on average, ASEAN, we are doing a good job in terms of digital connectivity development. But if we look closer to country by country, still a wide range of different over there. So I think these are points that, right now in terms of to move forward, these are things that country will kind of like have to pay attention to. How to do that? Okay, for the infrastructure, funding is one thing, but also sharing the experience, helping each other. I think for the point number 2, digital skill and law and regulation need a lot of, we need to know best practice. We want to hear about experience from other countries. And that is a way that we can move forward together. So I would say that for digital trade, the trade itself also, connect us closer. But the digital trade itself can also give additional benefit in terms of helping kind of like how to connect in other dimension of trade. And the most important one from me is that people get to know each other. So we can get in closer, know each other, and maybe we expect to see more trade flow between the country. And from that one, the trade value or the trade volume keep increasing. So the benefit of having FTA may be more clear or clearer to all the stakeholder benefit, policymaker, and so on. So that's why to continue from the first session in the morning, I think this is one kind of like additional tools that can enhance in both economic dimension, I would say, but people-to-people dimension as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sininath. Even you have completed your presentation before the 10 minutes. Thank you very much. You have given 1 minute to Alex. You have set time. So, and you have dealt with an important subject. We have been discussing that from the first session today. And digital trade, digital connectivity, e-commerce, and the laws and regulations to protect the data, etc., are being discussed heavily among the member states of the BIMSTEC. I think in the Q&A, we are going to discuss more about it, the digital relationships. Well, thank you, Dr. Sininath. Let me invite Dr. Alex for his special remarks. So, floor is yours, Alex. 10 plus 1. 1 minute from Sininath's side. 11 minutes.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I come from the UN office here in Bangkok, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, and most of my, thank you. Okay, thank you. Most of my work is around helping countries negotiate trade agreements or even help them prepare for negotiations. So I thought I would start by showing this tool, and well, that we've been working on for the last 7 years now. And basically it helps with many of the tasks of negotiating a trade agreement, and perhaps you find people at BIMSTEC may find this useful as well when doing the free trade agreement. It's been 20 years and 11 days since BIMSTEC free trade agreement framework has been signed. Nothing has happened much. Hopefully this will help. So let me ask you this. What's the benefit of Thailand joining BIMSTEC? Any guesses? Let's find out. Normally you would put this in a proposal for a consultancy firm, pay them $20,000, $50,000. A few months later, they'll give you a number. I'll give it to you all now for free, and you can and show you how to do this, and you can do this yourself at home. The URL is tina.trade. There's no registration. Just go ahead and get started. So it's as promised. Let's say I'm from Thailand, the economy that I'm interested in, and I want to negotiate. Now, obviously, you would negotiate bilaterally for any tariff reductions, but I will select multiple negotiation partners just to be part of the BIMSTEC. And just for you, I've created this here BIMSTEC grouping that has all the partners here, Bangladesh, Bhutan, etc., etc. Continue. And you can see that for Thailand, BIMSTEC partners, obviously less Thailand, represent about 5.81% of exports, export destination of Thailand. So if you click on that, you'll see that most of it is obviously India, followed by Myanmar, Bangladesh, and this is 2022 data. In terms of import sources of BIMSTEC, Thailand is 1.68%. So this is just normal sort of trade statistics, but that's not what we're interested in. So let's say, again, you're from Thailand, you want to negotiate with BIMSTEC partners. I only have 10 minutes. I can't go through all of these filters for you later. I just want to show that you can narrow down the list of your priority products. As you were saying earlier, it's important to ensure that some products are in sensitive lists, even though if you want to liberate most of trade, we know that there are always sensitive exclusion lists. So that's why we have this filtering things that help you to figure out what should be not on the exclusion list of your trade partners, what's important for Thailand. So we set up this list of products that we want to trade with other BIMSTEC partners, and Tina is now going through trade flows, tariffs, that's pretty much it, calculating indices of various sorts, and you can see this is about 3,500 products that Thailand should try to get 0% tariffs from BIMSTEC partners. And this is the cool part. This is the very cool part. I select all of these products. I simulate tariff liberalization. I'm not going to go through advanced settings, but I run this and it will tell me what's the impact of trade creation for Thailand. And you can see it will be about $3.5 billion, which basically means about a quarter or 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thailand to other BIMSTEC partners. 25% increase in exports of Thai So didn't cost you $20,000, $50,000, didn't spend a few weeks, here it is. You can do this for any other BIMSTEC partner or other trade agreements you might be interested in. There's a lot more details, but let me just ask you, because it was mentioned before by other participants. Instead of BIMSTEC, I'll just negotiate with again Thailand and just one BIMSTEC partner, which is India. I know ASEAN, India has trade agreement already, but we'll just do this for demonstrative purposes.
Maybe you do Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, let's do Bangladesh. Fair enough.
Because you already have a partner. Bangladesh is looking for many such FTAs.
Okay. So now let's improve trade of Thailand and Bangladesh. I'm skipping the descriptive statistics and here the filters, but also want to show you here in the bilateral filters, you can prioritize specific products even if the tariffs are not super high or the trade flows are not super high. And you can prioritize specific products that are important for sustainable development. So right now we have plastic substitutes and environmental goods from the APEX list or the environment agreements under WTO that never eventualized. But also these sort of products are increasingly being addressed in trade agreements. For example, New Zealand, they just signed a free trade agreement with the European Union, with the UK, and in both of those agreements you have annex of 200 or so products under environmental goods that they immediately go down to zero. Why? Because it's important for sustainable development. Now, plastic substitutes, this is a very new list that has been developed by UNCTAD only last year. And it's already been used as a list of products in negotiations on plastic waste and ocean pollution. And this is important for specifically BIMSTEC because last year, as you know, during Bangkok conference, it was decided to have blue economy as an important component of this FTA negotiation. So plastic substitutes, so for example, instead of a plastic bag, you would have a woven bag or something like that, or instead of plastic rope, you would have coconut husk-based rope. So there's a list of, a very long list of substitutes that you can have, and this will not only make trade more sustainable, but it also reduces plastic pollution in the ocean, which is a massive problem in the area, as you know. It will also, because these are mostly organic and agricultural products, it will help farmers. Okay, so you can prioritize these products and generate negotiation lists between Thailand and Bangladesh in this case. So you can actually see which of these products are important. So for example, this one, glycerol is a plastic substitute and paper is a plastic substitute. And so some of these, and this one is environmental goods, which is surveying equipment and so forth. So you can address these aspects of sustainable development in your FTA list as well. Just one other thing, it was mentioned on non-tariff measures. If I select some products, so this is cement, what kind of non-tariff products? So you get all this information of Thailand and Bangladesh trading cement. And on the bottom, you have the trains database. So this is the non-tariff measures that are imposed by Bangladesh on imports of cement from Thailand. There's no data for this particular product for cement. Maybe it's for other products is available, so no, but you can get information on all of these non-tariff measures, including from Global Trade Alert and the WTO e-ping system for each one of the products. Last thing, I know I usually have about an hour to go through this, but I only have 10 minutes. It's the thing that we just launched recently. It's the legal TINA. So it's legal.tina.trade. So you also want to look at the trade agreements text of trade agreements of countries that you're negotiating with. So in TINA, you're able to actually search through the text of every trade agreement we could get our hands on. So for example, staying with the blue economy, if I search something like plastic pollution or plastic waste or plastic pollution, and I search, and you can see that plastic solution is addressed in 3 trade agreements specifically. For example, New Zealand and United Kingdom last year. And you can see there's a specific chapter on protection of marine environment from ships pollution and marine litter. And here you have provision that you may consider using as perhaps a starting point for negotiation in BIMSTEC if blue economy is something that's important for it. And if you're not a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, you can actually ask our large language model to interpret you the meaning of this provision. So this is the provision as in the, this is the provision as shown in the New Zealand UK trade agreement. You can ask TINA to use our large language model to explain you as a lawyer would, what does this provision mean in simple terms. And this says that this particular provision here emphasizes the importance of protecting marine environment from pollution caused by ships and so forth. And you can even ask TINA things like whether it's binding or not, or provide a hypothetical example of when such and such provision would be used. This is all done on the fly. This is not a database. The only database we have is those texts of trade agreements. Happy to demonstrate to you personally or your trade negotiation teams. I can give you my details card. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Excellent demonstration on the TINA. I'm sure there will be some questions from the floor. Well, we have done our session and we still have 20 minutes to go. This 20 minutes we'll be utilizing for Q&A. I'm sure you'll have some questions to our speakers. Before I open the floor, 3 points which came in my mind and I'm unable to restrict myself. One is chairmanship of BIMSTEC is going from Thailand to Bangladesh. Connectivity, there are 7 pillars of cooperation in BIMSTEC. Connectivity belongs to Thailand. Thailand is continue to hold the chairmanship of connectivity. And Thailand is going to have major responsibilities to implement the Bangkok Agreement, primarily on the BCG front, plus moving this connectivity, whole discussion that they have discussed, moving forward, putting them in a higher scale. Bangladesh will have a responsibility the next year to organize, as the charter has come in place. Every 2 years, summit has to be done. Bangladesh is going to drive the BIMSTEC at least for 2 years now, and they will also have many responsibilities to implement 1 year so-called deadline that we have discussed today. This is, the observation from my side, and I would like to know our speaker's view on that. That is Bangladesh is going to drive, because Bangladesh is also looking after trade investment in the BIMSTEC, that pillar, so it would be perhaps possible for Bangladesh as a chair, plus the chair for the trade investment. One observation from my side, in the global shipping industry, you might be knowing that the shipping industry is not in a good shape. One is water level in the Panama Canal is drying or dwindling. That's the word they are using. Second is because of the Houthis attack, the Red Sea is huge, it's a big issue now. India in particular and some other countries are coming up with an alternate trade route with the Middle East. It's called IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, which was sidelined the G20 summit. And there's lots of things that are happening in Delhi, Dr. Tino is also part of it. So IMEC, there is a discussion happening perhaps today's informal retreat in Delhi, BIMSTEC, IMEC partnerships, can that be a way forward? This is, I would like to know if anybody could like to say something like that. Third is, there is a discussion happening, that let's expand the BIMSTEC memberships. We have 7 members. Bay of Bengal is also, reaching to Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. So 7 plus 3 making 10 ASEAN and BIMSTEC. So perhaps the first circle of BIMSTEC, which Ambassador Sumit, his original idea that let's connect all the Bay of Bengal countries. So if there is an expansion, and I do not know, because expansion as per the charter, it has to be on consensus basis. Every 7 member countries have to support it. Given the geopolitics and in undercurrents among the existing members, what is going to be the BIMSTEC expansion? So these are a very quick observation from my side. I have some, at the end of the closing remarks, I will have some 2 recommendations to take forward our discussion. So with that, I open the floor. If anybody has we still have 18 minutes with us. And I might invite Professor Mustafa Yusuf. And then I would request also Dr. Tino to say something, Ambassador Sumit, and others, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we had a wonderful presentation by our panelists. Indeed, someone who follows these discussions very keenly, I learned a lot. With regard to Dr. Salim Rahan's point that trade facilitation is often looked at as import facilitation, I think this is very correct. In many of our countries, when we take initiatives towards trade facilitation, there is resistance because many people think, even the government, that it is import facilitation. But even if it is import facilitation, it is consumer welfare enhancing. It also helps our export-oriented industries to get the inputs and intermediates through facilitated imports. So I think that should be highlighted. And also, I think that because all of our countries, BIMSTEC countries, are members of WTO, and there is a trade facilitation agreement in WTO where we will have to take various obligations. And even, Parosh, even the LDCs, because Bhutan has already graduated, Bangladesh and Nepal will be graduating in November 2026, so we will have to take trade facilitation obligations once we graduate. Now, a number of flexibilities have been given in terms of category A, B, and C. So I think that we have to take measures, and that will help the trade cooperation within the BIMSTEC as well. With regard to the Parash, you made the point with regard to the BIMSTEC motor vehicle agreement. In SARC, we signed the motor vehicle agreement in 2015, and we have completed the standard operating procedures also in 2018. But we haven't been able to operationalize it. So how not to do it? Maybe we can learn from SARC. And how to do it, we can learn from ASEAN. So that is one observation that I have. Alexei, thank you very much. We do use Tina, and my colleagues use it extensively to do various simulations. One point that I wanted to clarify is that you have mentioned about the trade creation aspect. Now, when you go for this type of negotiation, there is also trade diversion. So whether that can also be captured and whether you can identify the net benefits from trade creation and trade diversion. One is positive, the other is negative. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's pass the mic to next to Ambassador Sumit.
Thank you, Pradeep. I think all the presentations were excellent. I mean, we learned many things. I'm not going to talk about FTA because it is we are repeating the mistakes and lost opportunities and all. One thing which came out of this panel, emphasizing the digital infrastructure for Bay of Bengal countries. Now, how do we do that? Because if you see, the member states are having different digital infrastructure within their national territories, and their cost is varying from one end to the other end. If you take a country like Sri Lanka, now of course digital connectivity is very expensive. And how do we provide the affordable broadband connectivity? That is an important aspect. Again, we are connected. Sri Lanka is always connected through the Simavi and Bay of Bengal gateway network. All these things are there. Unfortunately, Rupa is not here to support or provide an answer. Years back, UNESCAP started the Asia Pacific Information Superhighway project. I don't know whether it is still running, up and running. The idea is to provide the digital standard digital connectivity across all the member states using right of the way under the Asian Highways project as well as Transition Railway Network. I think that is something that we need to look into because different tariffs, different charges on broadband connectivity will also affect the final outcome of the product. So this is something that I thought that we need to work on that, and then need to keep trying to explain, because when we had, I mean, Sri Lanka is a classic example, because when we had the economic crisis, the main thing they did was to add tariff to telephone charges and telephone and internet charges to collect taxes, which is very unreasonable. Thank you.
Daya, briefly. I'll come to you. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. My comments suggestions are the same, in line with the two previous speakers. Right. First, I will talk about this trade facilitation. Is facilitate only import? To be frank with you, Professor Salim, this was discussed at length when the WTO TFA was negotiated. A group of developing countries argue against TFA agreement, where I was there. When the Annex D, 2004, adopted, this was the key idea. But overwhelmingly developing countries recognized the importance of the trade facilitation. We all know very popular theorem, learner's asymmetry theorem. What this simply say is any tax on import will have the same effect on the export. So any barrier on trade import will have a similar kind of implication. So therefore, the BIMSTEC countries get out of this syndrome, thinking this import facilitation is a not good thing. Right? I think, I'm sorry, trade facilitation. So there are many examples. I will stop that. Second one relate to my good friend Ambassador Sumit mentioned, and also Professor Sinant, who emphasized the importance of the digital trade. Very true. Digital trade is expanding exponentially. This is a one specific proposal I want to make at the way forward, right? So what we need here to think of digital transformation strategy. It's a broad strategy to move forward. Harmonization of the policies and regulation governing the digital trade is badly needed. I think ASEAN again has moved forward faster. We have BIMSTEC working group on technology, expert group on that.
Right.
There are certain initiatives which I will want to explain during the
Right.
the session.
Thank you, because
Yes.
time is up.
Thank
We're
you.
getting up. So maybe I will come to you there
Okay.
next, or then Dr. Tino. You first, then you give it to him, and then we'll come to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chong Doji from BIMSTEC Secretariat.
Oh.
So, thank you, Chair and panelists, for your great interventions and remarks. With regard to connectivity as well as trade, it is very interesting to see lots of actionable suggestions and recommendations from the panelists. But two things that I would like to point out is, in terms of connectivity, like with support of Asian Development Fund, more than 200 projects have been already identified in the master plan. But as panelists have pointed out, there is no committed funding. So the way forward I could see is to at least pilot one or two impactful projects at the regional level, so that rest of the project can follow later, because there is no committed funding as of now. So that is important. Then other one, on trade front, lots of suggestions and ways forward, like removal of non-tariff barriers, and then like what other few suggestions as well. Like I have already seen that panelists have suggested. But whatever decisions with regard to trade under BIMSTEC, all decisions have to be taken in different working groups or expert level. So if you look at the frequency of those different meetings, expert groups, frequencies have not been as expected. So maybe one of the suggestions is, I think different groups like Group on Custom Cooperation, Trade Facilitation, including the Umbrella Trade Negotiation Committee, should meet as expected, because whatever discussions at academic or workshop level, conference level take place, decision has to be taken in order to move the process forward. So I feel that one important thing is all meetings at various levels under trade, under BIMSTEC trade, if FTA has to move forward, then they should meet as required or as expected. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important intervention, Excellency. Thank you. Dr. Tino.
Thank you, Pravir. Just a question to maybe the trade economists, Prabir, Salim, Sirinat, and I think
Paras.
Paras, sorry, of course. Paras. Is this FTA becoming a mantra? Is it still useful? Your studies, I've seen some of yours, again, I'm not an economist, suggest that the actual benefits of a old classy FTA deal in BIMSTEC wouldn't be tremendous these days. Maybe 10 years there would have been. So I just wonder what you think today, actually. We can say, of course, 1 year, but I think we all know that it may not happen. We just heard the director from BIMSTEC also telling us, if you want that, you have to show up. We know countries are not showing up. So, but you think it's worth? I don't know. You are into the thick of it. You know the people in the governments who are doing this. So either 1 year FTA, or instead a shallower BIMSTEC economic partnership agreement, a BEPA, BECA, whatever you want to call it, BEFA, but something that actually is much more in vogue these days, which you throw some services, IPR, a bit of trade, a bit of investments, and at least a lower hanging fruit, but much shallower, but maybe that could be more productive. Just wondering what you think, to aim high or low.
Sure, panelists will reply to it. Very important questions he asked. Dr. Zhou, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to thank the distinguished panelists for your very valuable discussions. I wanted to thank Alex for giving us a very valuable advice, especially for the open small economies. I think that this sort of information is quite important and valuable. But if I may, I just wanted to come back to the question of non-tariff measures and whether is there any way that you might be able to tackle that issue, and then whether usually, for small open economies, it is always costly to negotiate FTA with much more bigger trading partners. And usually, it is quite costly for them to adjust to any requirements for the trade facilitations and things like that. So maybe perhaps I wonder whether you may have any ideas, and then maybe is there any way that the SCAP or any other international organization might be able to advise on that? And then my second question goes to Ajahn Satapon regarding your connectivity options. Most of these connectivity projects are mega infrastructure projects, and then they were built with the long-term view of using it at a later time. But we often see all kinds of disruptions, the logistic disruptions, with the COVID, and then also now with the Red Sea. And if I may use my own example in Myanmar, all the conflicts, so that will continue to postpone a lot of missing links to finish. So when did these disruptions happen? How the infrastructure projects and big connectivity designs that are built on for the long term, how they can actually adjust to the short term disruptions, and how resilient they can actually do it. Whether I also curious to know, because you are the business professor, that the role of the private sector in adjusting to it.
Thank you. Sorry, because time is fully used by all our panelists. But we are going to give 5 more minutes to conclude. So I request first to start with Dr. Sininath. Any remarks? You may not, and you won't be able to reply all the queries. Please have a discussion during a tea or coffee break. Before I give the floor to our panelists for the closing remarks, one query from my side is a query to Professor Satapon, that in his presentation, he said that common control area, basically, 2 customs, they go deeper and they do the things sitting together. Means we don't need 2 separate things for customs clearances. So if you can tell us if Thailand has implemented such kind of project in the Mekong region or not. So with that, I go to Dr. Srinath first, and then accordingly, I will ask him.
Okay. Thank you very much. So touch upon the digital trade. I think with BIMSTEC and also we overlapping with ASEAN right now. We know how to develop step by step, let's say digital infrastructure and so on. And other thing is that we also know what we need to take note in order to walk smoothly and stably into the future. So many issues about infrastructure is one thing, but also the people. I mean, digital skill and regulation is kind of I think that's what ASEAN country we still try and working together how to have the consistent, how to really have a flow. Beside the physical connectivity as one layer that we see right now in terms of trade in good, another layer is also digital connectivity, digital things that we connect together. So with that one, I think ASEAN is here to kind of cooperate as well. So I think we can move forward that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Paras?
To the question about FTA, I think it depends on country to country. But to give the example of Nepal, now yes, if you liberalize tariffs on imports from BIMSTEC countries, then yes, theory would say that, and even most models, including what was shown in TINA, for example, which is a very useful exercise, would show that certain trade would be created in that consumer welfare will increase, right? Input cost will go down, right? That's there. So, but then 2/3 of our imports come from India, right? So basically liberalizing tariffs for BIMSTEC means liberalizing essentially tariffs for India, right? And that's where the bulk of the revenue comes from. So if the government decides that it is ready to import, liberalize tariffs for most of our imports, which is from India, it's easy. You can do it on the BIMSTEC front. But with regard to our exports, we already have a zero duty access to India. And for many products, our exports are zero to Bangladesh or Thailand, right? So if you run such models, then because existing flows are zero, the predicted value won't exist. Now, one has to make an argument that when trade cost goes down, you will also enable you to start exporting goods that you didn't previously export to that country. But for that, we don't really have hard numbers. But theory supports it, and other exercises done in the context of other countries might support it, right? The question then would be for policymakers, should the revenue loss, for example, is certain, whereas the gains from export is a bit uncertain, right? And they are caught in that uncertainty. Not that I'm advocating their stance, but then I don't envy their position they are in because I can do my research. But if non-tariff measures are effectively tackled, then even on products that we already enjoy duty-free access, we'll be able to export more. So an FTA that tackles non-tariff measures would in a way help. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Satapan?
All right, thank you for the question. To the best of my knowledge, I believe that all the design of transportation infrastructure or logistic infrastructure does not take into account such a logistic or supply chain disruption. And when we talk about disruption, it means crisis, which means that it has a high impact with a very, very low probability of occurrence. So instead of trying to design the infrastructure to be able to handle such a disruption, I think all the infrastructure and the operator has to come up with some kind of a BCP or crisis management measure, and they have to try to ask a what if question. What if this happened? What they should do? Yeah, that would be my take on that question. Thank you.
Common control.
Pardon? Common control. Sorry, I did not catch up that question. Could you quickly repeat that?
Common control, you say, the customs.
Okay, yes.
Thailand implemented.
No. Actually, common control area, there's only one borders. It's called Lao Bao border between Lao PTR and Vietnam. Trying to implement that, but what happened is that it's not very single stop inspection. What happened is that the officer from both countries are staying in the same station, but once they do the clearance, the cross border, they do double job. So we as a traveler, we have to submit our document to the officer from one country, and then after that we go to the next window and do the same thing. So it's not very
All right.
SSI.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Ryan.
Just very quickly answering to Dr. Constantino about this FTA. FTA is not a mantra, I think. My view, even it's not a panacea. It can't really the solution to everything. But it builds some confidence. I think when you really want to look at a group of countries as a bloc, a regional bloc, I think FTA binds them. So this is something is missing in the BIMSTEC, and I think so that's something probably we need to look at. It's not just FTA for FTA, but having a kind of confidence building among the countries. I fully agree with Paras that when it comes to import liberalization, the impacts are very automatic and very immediate. But the export response, it requires a lot of other things. So that's why probably you see the kind of resistance or slowness in responding to the liberalization agenda. So if you look at the South Asia, BIMSTEC region, for India or Thailand, the fear of revenue loss, I think it should be very low. But for countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, it's high because Nepal relies 50% on revenue from import revenue. Bangladesh is 1/3 revenue comes from import revenue. Here I see the real opportunity of cooperation to build the capacity of these countries, the weaker countries, to respond to this. Otherwise, as long as that capacity is not there, I fully agree with the views that trade facilitation is not really import facilitation. It's, of course, it should develop help export promotion too. But since the response is not auto, it doesn't really auto trigger export. And unless the capacity is not there, is not really built, we'll still see that all the countries, they're signing the agreements, but on the ground, really to be very different from what is signed on the document. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Alex?
Thank you. Just I had a few questions here, so I thought I would share the answers here. So first of all, you can see it. So I ran a quick simulations. You said Malaysia, Singapore should join. Well, if Malaysia joins, they will increase their exports to BIMSTEC by $10.82 billion. Quite a lot. That's 31%. Well, 1/3.
I think you should show this because many of the consultants would lose the job, like me. No, just joking.
No worries, no worries. You can use it next time. Your question, it will consist of 7.9 billion of trade creation, but also will consist of almost 3 billion of trade diversion. That means that the market is pulled away from other countries that are not part of it. So if you're, for example, from Singapore, and you'll see here in the affected economy, or Indonesia in this case, so you can see $500 million Indonesia has lost the market right there, or Singapore's, so that's basically extra incentive for Singapore to join this agreement, because if this agreement does go through, this is how much money they will lose through the trade diversion effect. Non-tariff measures, we are adding the simulations, so it's not live yet, but let me show you. We've calculated the ad valorem equivalence of non-tariff measures, and similar to GTAP, we'll be able to remove certain percentage, like 10% of AVs of NTMs. And lastly, everybody's talking about the trade facilitation and bringing WTO TFA, but there's always the framework agreement on facilitation of cross-border paperless trade in Asia and the Pacific. Bangladesh is a member as well. But important part of this is that by improving trade facilitation for exports, it will also potentially increase significantly government revenues, because a lot of money is lost through trade misinvoicing. Using trade, you send money to your trade partners, to the bank accounts from Switzerland to US to Cayman Islands. Okay, so trade facilitation will substitute the import loss revenue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I put an apology because we exceeded by 15 minutes the allotted time, but you trust me that discussion was very live. Many of the queries raised by you all are resolved, or at least they have responded to you. It was a very live discussion. And it is not an informal retreat that's happening somewhere today and tomorrow. And it's a really very formal discussion going to feed into BIMSTEC integration process. I thank all the panelists who are with me, and we close it and join for tea and coffee. Before we close, I take a photo because I have to tweet and tag to our informal retreat leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the chair and the panelists. I think that we already have seen a lot of things on this session on trade, investment, and connectivity. It's not only the logistics, but the digital literacy is really involved. And we have only short time for the break, but I think that we can take the break and we can come to the room, and when we're going to start the session at 3:30 at the schedule. Okay.